I'm Christy. Today I want to share some thoughts with you about living situations. So as our fall schedule begins to settle in, I find myself thinking more and more about what the future holds for AJ. Okay, the fact that he keeps telling me that he'll be a full adult, meaning 21, next year doesn't help. Or maybe it just keeps the idea in front of mind for me. Now AJ has very definite plans about where he wants to live when he's a full adult. Mom, I will buy my own house and live all by myself. He's very excited for this to happen. Now, I'm not sure he'll ever be able to actually buy his own house, but it has made me look into ways that he could live apart from me. I've thought a lot about where he should live in the future. Now, honestly, I think we kind of have to look into something that's away from us. He is determined to live in my own house, and he is anxiously awaiting the day he moves out. Now, we hear it a lot when he's mad at us or doesn't want to do something we tell him. I just hate this house. Now, of course, he thinks that moving out will mean that he has complete freedom to do whatever he wants. I'm sure life is going to knock him around a bit, but this is something he's going to have to learn the hard way, I think. Now, most people I talk to who have somebody with special needs expect and plan for their loved one to live with them forever. And when they pass, they expect and plan for a sibling to take over for them. Now, this is probably the simplest solution. Family knows the loved one best. Quirks, likes and dislikes, routines, etc. It makes the transition from one family member's house to another easier. But I find myself wondering if maybe this is what they plan because they haven't stopped to think about or look into other possibilities. Now, I know one individual with special needs who lived in a group home for a while. Now, I don't know the specifics, and I don't know how long he lived there or why he moved. But I know he was living with family before and after the group home. I find that I have a very different perspective than most people in a similar situation. Now, granted, AJ's great desire to live in my own home has driven a lot of this initially and made me look into options. But beyond his desire to live independently, I find myself leaning this way all on my own. I have several things driving my thoughts. First of all, I want AJ to live as independently as possible. He longs for his independence, and while there are some areas that he's not ready for that level of independence or what he wishes he could, I do work to give him as much independence as he can handle. Secondly, I think about when my husband and I are gone. Now, hopefully, it's going to be many, many years from now. But what if there's an accident? If H is living with us when the accident happens, his whole world will be shattered in an instant. Not only will he have lost his parents and the huge amount of grief that will entail, but now his whole living environment is gone as well. He'll have to move somewhere new, adjust to a new routine, new people around him, and so many more things. All of this while grieving the loss of his parents. That's a lot for anyone, let alone someone who has special needs and has a diminished mental capacity. Now, on the other hand, if AJ is already living apart from us and there is an accident, he'll have to deal with the grief. But the rest of his life will continue as it usually does. His routine will continue uninterrupted, or at least minimally so, because I do intend to stay involved in his life. I'm thinking we'll probably see him about once a week, kind of like maybe at church, and then we take him to lunch, and then back to his house. We'll have to see where he actually lives and how that will work when the time actually comes. Now, please understand, I know that his grief will be extreme. It should be for anyone who loses a loved one, let alone two at once. But if he already is living away from us, then all he'll have to deal with is the grief. If he's living with us, he'll have his grief plus all the changes into his routine and his daily living. Now, I'm concerned that both of these together would be too much for him to deal with at once. As I've thought about moving AJ out, I've also realized that I always want to have a room in our house for AJ to come home to should his current living situation become unacceptable. Now, fortunately, my husband agrees with me. And while we like the idea of AJ living independently from us, we refuse to leave him in a bad or an unhealthy situation. We know that anywhere we end up, we will have a place for AJ to call home should the need arise. It's a nice backup plan that gives me peace of mind. So, in light of what I've said, we're looking into options to move AJ out of our home in the next year or so. Again, a lot of this is driven by his constant commenting, "I can't wait to live in my own house." But I also think that the independence and separation from us will be good for all of us. I've thought for a few years that we'd move him into a group home, and I'm still open to that option. But where we live, that means moving him across town, away from everything he's familiar with and ever known. And he likes his life here. Now, a friend of mine also works in the special needs community and is familiar with the group homes in our area. she hasn't found them to be the best option in many cases. So that makes me a little bit hesitant. So I'm looking into other alternatives and trying to put my creativity cap on to come up with more possibilities. I have a couple ideas. We'll see how they pan out as the fall continues. Mentally, I'm preparing myself for an empty nest in about a year. Sean will be leaving for college then, and like I said, I suspect we'll be moving AJ out around the same time. After all of these years of having kids around, it seems a bit strange, in a good way, to think that it'll just be the two of us again. But you know what? It's time for the boys to move on to the adult parts of their lives. And I'm so excited to see what the future holds for them. And to see how much AJ rises to the challenge of living independently. So all of this leads me to my question for this week. What are your thoughts or plans for your loved one? Do they long to live as independently as well? I'd love to hear about it. Or maybe you have a totally different perspective that you'd like to share with me. I would love to hear it. You can leave me a comment below, or you can leave me a comment over on the blog. That's at www.havenofhopeforme.com. This originally posted in September of 2020. I'm looking to the future with all the possibilities, and I'm still saying that life is good, and there is never a dull moment.